to make it perfect, maybe you need to move a little bit because your head is hiding some of the text. In the yes, it's a little bit more. It's okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, welcome to the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities. Now we are going to start our session soon, so please, all speakers, please come up to the stage and sit on the chair. Okay, please, all speakers, please come up to the stage. 네, 이제 곧 저희 세션을 시작하겠습니다. 오늘 준비해 주신 연사분들께서는 지금 무대로 올라와 주시기
We are going to begin our session soon. I would kindly ask you to move up onto the stage, please.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, welcome to the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities. The session will start soon, so all participants should enter the conference hall and sit down. And online participants, please be ready for the forum. 자, 이제부터 2021 제5차 유네스코 학습도시 국제회의를 시작하겠습니다. 네, 모든 참가자분들께서는 행사장에 입장해 주시고요. 그리고 자리에 착석해 주시기 바랍니다. 현재 온라인으로 참가하고 계신 분들께서는 준비된 화면 앞에 자리해 주시기 바랍니다.
We're now opening the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities.
Please use the receiver if you need simultaneous interpretation. And channel 1 for Korean, channel 2 for English, and channel 3 for French. Online participants could choose preferred language in platform. 자, 아울러 본 행사는 한국어와 영어 그리고 프랑스어 동시 통역이 제공됩니다. 동시 통역이 필요하신 분들께서는 현재 자리에 놓여져 있는 통역 수신기를 사용하시고
This conference benefits from simultaneous interpretation in English, French, Spanish, and Korean. Korean is on channel 1, English channel 2, French channel 3. Online participants can also select the language of their choice.
Offline participants could switch your cell phone to vibration mode or turn off the power for the event. 오프라인 참가자분들께서는 원활한 행사 진행을 위해서 지금 소지하고 계시는 휴대폰을 진동 모드로 바꿔주시거나 전원을 꺼주시면
For
감사합니다.
online participants, please turn off the sound of your phone.
자, 코로나 확산 방지를 위해서 입장하신 후에도 반드시 마스크를 착용해 주시기 바랍니다. In addition,
We kindly ask you to keep your mask on.
due to the disinfection guidelines. 그리고 방역 지침 준수를 위해서 오늘 모든 연사분들께서는 마스크를 착용하고 발표 진행하는 점 깊은 양해 부탁드리겠습니다. And those who attend online should also sit in front of the screen and leave the speaker on and keep the microphone mute for a smooth meeting. 온라인 참석자분들께서도 스크린 앞에 자리하신 후에 스피커를 켜두시기 바라고요.
For online participants, please turn off the sound of your microphone?
If you have any inconvenience using it, please contact the Zoom chat room. 그리고 혹시 현재 행사장 소리가 들리시지 않거나 또 이용에 불편함이 있으시다면 줌 채팅방을 통해서 연락.
If you hear any background noise, you can send us a message in the chat.
International Conference on Learning Cities. I'm Ju Eun-no, who is the MC for today's session. So now there are some people seated here and others participating in online. But beyond the limitation of space, we will share the various opinions under the theme of strengthening learning for health in the context of learning cities. Okay, now I will pass the mic to the Miss Nicola Gray, the moderator of today's session. Miss Nicola Gray, are you connected?
I am connected. Hello from the UK and a warm hello to all our friends in Yeonsun and congratulations for the excellent conference that I've been watching from a distance. Indeed, welcome to this parallel session entitled Strengthening Learning for Health in the Context of Learning Cities. And over the next few minutes, we will hope to bring you inspiring and thought-provoking presentations on this topic. And we hope that you will join the discussion and share your own experiences. Conference platform participants will see on the Zoom platform that there is space to type messages to the panelists, and I hope that you will take the opportunity to do so. My name is Nicola Gray. I'm an academic pharmacist at the University of Huddersfield in England, in the UK, and I'm a researcher within the UNESCO Chair Global Health and Education Research Group. My research interest is in the health of young people, including work relating to their online health literacy, and I am delighted and honoured to be with you today. This forum aims to provide an operational understanding of health literacy, which is seen as the individual dimension of learning for health. It will discuss the type of data needed and available in this topic and their use to guide educational interventions. We've already heard a number of contributions relating to health literacy. For example, in the first plenary yesterday, Mr. Alejandro Gomez Lopez from Bogota in Colombia said that health literacy is here to stay. And Professor Didier Jourdan described health literacy as a key component of learning for health and well-being, enabling people to protect and promote their individual health and that of their family. Now, I know we're in an unusual position where the moderator is in the cloud, but all the speakers are thankfully in the room with you. And so what I will do for each speaker is invite them to the platform whilst I give a short introduction about their biography, and then I'll encourage them and invite them to give their presentation. Our first speaker, however, I understand will be making a video presentation, and so I shall go ahead and introduce her. She's Councillor Kate Nicholl, the current Lord Mayor of the City of Belfast in Northern Ireland. Councillor Nicholl took up office on the 1st of June 2021. She's a member of the Alliance Party, was originally co-opted onto Belfast City Council in 2016 and was elected as a representative for the Balmoral district at the 2019 local government election. The theme for Councillor Nicholl's year in office is Our Belfast, with a commitment to meet the people in every area, to recognise those who are making a difference in every quarter, and to find ways to work with them for the betterment of the city. She also wishes to highlight the voices of children and young people during her year in office, and to champion action on climate change and the environment. We congratulate Councillor Nicholl and the City of Belfast on their 2021 Learning City Award, and Councillor Nicholl has sent a video to us with her presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Kate Nicholl and I'm the Lord Mayor of Belfast, and I am delighted to be able to present to you today. I'm just sorry I couldn't be there in person. Belfast's vision as a learning city is set down in our Learning City Charter. We work within an agreed definition of health literacy, which I'm sure you'll appreciate is not always easy to do. Belfast Healthy Cities, which is a World Health Organization member, we're part of their network. And our aim really is to make Belfast a more healthy, equitable, and sustainable city. We work collaboratively with city partners to build the evidence base and collect data that we need to make informed decisions. Getting a holistic approach is important, and we recognize the wider determinants which impact on health, such as income, employment, housing, behaviors. It's really important to understand this in order to inform planning, support services, as well as supporting awareness, such as health literacy. So collaboration is key for us. A health literacy working group has been established under Belfast Healthy Cities to identify priorities for health literacy in Belfast. Other partnerships are working on digital data solutions citywide, such as Smart Belfast and Innovation City, and we collaborate across different sectors, which is really key to capturing, sharing, and analyzing data. So our approach to data is based on measuring outcomes and impact. Our community plan, which is called the Belfast Agenda, uses an outcomes-based accountability approach, which focuses on results and impact on people's lives. Our community plan measures well-being across the life course of our population. We use a range of performance indicators and gather evidence from a range of sources to do this. And one of our key outcomes in the Belfast Agenda is that our city will be a place where everyone experiences good health and well-being by the year 2035. In terms of quality assurance, we use reliable data and are working to innovate. We currently work with our research centers of excellence to provide quality assurance. We are working to create a data culture among city partners. We are looking at innovative solutions to data which can be offered through smart technology. And we have an ambition to create a standard city data platform for the city. We can't ignore the impact, the effects of the pandemic. And though we have no official data on health literacy in Northern Ireland based on research undertaken in England and Ireland, experts estimate that prior to the pandemic, approximately 40% of people in Northern Ireland have limited health literacy. The pandemic has highlighted low health literacy as a global health problem, and the impact has been greatest on deprived communities and those individuals and groups who are already considered to be vulnerable. So what have we done to improve health literacy in Belfast? Well, as part of the WHO Healthy City movement, we have recognized at the highest political level the importance of health literacy. We have established an interagency group that is working systematically to improve health literacy and data collection in Belfast. We are committed to collaboration and interagency working to provide services which help people make a healthy choice an easy choice. And we have supported numerous programs which have provided individuals and communities with skills and knowledge in recognition of people as the city's key asset. What more can be done to operationalize health literacy? Well, there's a lot of information on this slide, but the key points are health literacy cannot be guaranteed, but we can take steps to help us on the way. And the slide contains more detail, but some key points are ensuring that existing services are properly communicated and visible to target audiences, addressing digital poverty and the use of technology. This is something we've been very conscious of across the city in so many different areas. The importance of being accessible, going to people and using unconventional places like music venues, sports activities, shopping centers, just thinking outside the box a bit. More in-depth understanding and promotion of the health literacy concept across key services, expanding the approach to measure health literacy, and sharing good practice and intelligence. No one should be left behind, and health literacy is not solely confined to the actions or behaviors of individuals, but it also requires structural and cultural change. Belfast has made some fantastic progress in recent years. However, we fully acknowledge that there is a long way to go, and as a city, we're committed to the lifelong learning journey. We're currently undertaking a review of all our learning city structures, which will look at inclusive and innovative ways to strengthen our commitment to lifelong learning. We believe that no one should be left behind. Thank you.
I apologise, it was not clear to us that at first you saw a black screen, but were able to hear Councillor Nichols speak. I'm not sure whether at the moment with the timing of the session, whether we can show that again, but let's keep that under review and see whether we can do something before the end of the session. Thank you for your patience and perseverance. I'm going to invite our next speaker. Well, sorry, I'm going to comment on the presentation first. That I thought what was really interesting about it was the intersectoral approach that Belfast is taking to health literacy and its diligence in bringing together a data collection platform and making sure that quality assurance of the data is correct. And I'm sure that Belfast is not the only city that is now trying to collect its own accurate information about the health literacy of its population. And if there is one good thing to come out of this pandemic, then being able to have more information at a population level, that will be a fantastic result. And with that, I'd like to now invite our second speaker to the platform as I introduce him. Mr. Jose Alberto Moreno Villamil from Tunja in Colombia. He is the Secretary of Education of the city of Tunja. He is a lawyer from Universidad de los Andes. He's a specialist in criminal law, public management and cooperative economy. He has a master's degree in public policy and is a university lecturer. And Mr. Moreno Villamil is a former councillor, former mayor, and former deputy. And we really look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Para mí es un gusto estar.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today to represent Colombia, a country which is facing a transition in the post-conflict area in terms of education after many years of war and a peace process that was signed 5 years ago. In education, we are supporting this process. The city of Tunja has a mayor who is a doctor, Luis Alejandro Funime, and he's very aware of the possibility of engaging in dialogue between education and medicine and promoting interaction between these sectors. In March 2020, everything changed and we had to engage in strategic planning to adjust to these new times, to the new dynamics of uncertainty and fear, and to address dystopia through education and literature. Education was born in Colombia, in our city, in 1822. The first secondary school was founded here. So we have this tradition of education in our city, which allows us to continue reflecting on the issue of education. And last year, we became a learning city in the midst of all of this uncertainty, all of these new dynamics in a time of pandemic. This allowed us to work to ensure cohesion in education. Among the 180,000 inhabitants, we have 43,000 university students. It's a small city, but it revolves around education. It's a city that is mobilized with a territorial focus, and despite being small, it has one of the highest levels of education quality in the country, above some bigger cities. And that's because education is a priority for our administration, which has understood that education is the path towards transformation. Between 2019 and 2020, we managed to fight against school dropout rates. 1,000 Venezuelan students came to enroll in our schools. So as you can see, there's a lot of integration. These students fled their countries, and a lot of other children are also in situations of disability. So we have a very inclusive approach to education. Now, we focus on mathematics, natural sciences, among other subjects. And during the pandemic, we encouraged our students to read and to write using books, not only for education, but also to ensure the mental health, not only of students, but also of teachers and families. And we believe that the narrative and language is a way of generating an intersectoral approach between education and health. At family level, we undertook a great amount of work to strengthen the family through collective activities to give the family a central role, which involved new roles of parents, fathers and mothers. Many of these parents didn't know what was happening in the classrooms. And with virtual education, well, the classroom became a home. So parents were much more involved in the process, and this led to new dynamics, which had an influence on education, but also on health, and a greater involvement of families in health and education processes generally. Here you can see that we inaugurated new classrooms. We took advantage of the situation to generate new projects and new dynamics. We held vaccination days. We engaged in lots of testing, lots of prevention, lots of public health policy, biosecurity as well. We had to take some measures, and at the time there may have been some resistance, but in the end, these were the right decisions to make to instill healthy habits among the population in order to overcome this very difficult situation. And this was all achieved thanks to the mayor of the city. We developed a transversal health and learning strategy, which went beyond the classroom. The concept of an educational city goes beyond the classroom to public spaces, families, all sectors. It's a city model in which we educate everyone at all times, not just for school, for a mark, but for life in general, for reconciliation, which is what the country needs, a polarized country with a lot of complexities, but in which education is a path towards hope. School food was shared with families. We instituted a school feeding program, the PAE, which enabled us to provide food to families. The pandemic laid bare many vulnerabilities and inequalities. And therefore, it was essential to strengthen not only education, but also to ensure that families and their children alike were fed. We developed a strategy to teach street sellers, street vendors, English as well, because we believed that it was important not only to teach young people, but the entire population. We also developed a program to mobilize, to encourage young people to tell stories, to allow us to be transported through literature to well-being. Literature can move us from sadness to happiness, and it's a key that opens many doors. It allows us to tell stories. This allowed us to address mental health issues through stories, and this program was a way of uniting the city through literature and narratives. In order to address the challenges we faced, we worked in the field of biosecurity. We worked very closely with the Education Secretary and the Social Protection Secretary to visit schools, to establish protocols, to establish rigorous biosecurity measures to ensure a safe and responsible return to school. We had to overcome a number of obstacles. Some sectors did not want to return. Some teachers did not want to return even once students returned to school. But education transcends any individual interests. It represents the general interest. So we were able to cooperate together to ensure cohesion at all levels. Here you can see that we engaged in empowerment activities, literacy activities. Here you can see our Minister of Education, who visited the city twice, supporting us with food, material, infrastructure. But beyond the material aspects, the Ministry of Education of Colombia developed a teacher contact program. So every week, thousands of us would meet up to talk about school. We wouldn't let the flame of education go out. We kept it alight from afar, all of us together. The ministry, the mayor, we overcame our differences to think collectively, and everyone took part in this unique moment for education. We preserved it and took care of it. We focused greatly on biosecurity, ensuring mobile hand washing systems, for example, because we wanted to prepare students to be able to return to school safely. The students had been at home for over a year, and therefore we wanted to ensure that the return to school would be orderly. This wasn't easy, but we were able to achieve it through prevention, biosecurity, and other measures that were successful and allowed us to take care of everyone. We signed an agreement with Villa Maria, my friend Gabriel, and 2 other cities in Colombia, cooperation agreements with Rio Negro and Enriscado, and we maintained communication even at the hardest times during the pandemic. We were discussing issues with Argentina, other countries, and we were able to ensure that we were never alone. We were always working together as a network. This was essential to articulate our work as a network and to have allies in our country and in other countries. And Gabriel is here today. We worked with him in Argentina. It was an opportunity to work together in Latin America, united together. So what conclusions can we draw from this? Well, the flame of education was not put out. We built action together, and we did this through prevention. Mental health is essential, not just children, but also teachers and parents and the education community. Despite the restrictions, We're still in the midst of a transition, and we're continuing to work on mental health, particularly with the most vulnerable groups. We're providing support. School is a space for solidarity, cooperation, collaboration. It's not just an area of knowledge. School is a node for territorial development, which goes beyond knowledge. Tunja wants to maintain its leadership in the field of education in Colombia, despite being a small city. We want to protect this legacy that we have developed over hundreds of years as an educating city. Our mayor created a fund to generate additional resources in addition to the central government level funding, because funding is essential in terms of accomplishing our agenda. This allowed us to support health and education through a mayor who is sensitive to these topics by combining national and local level action. It's been a real pleasure to be here today. Being a learning city is a constant challenge, and it's been very rewarding to come to Korea and to meet people from other places around the world. All of those who are here today with us, Gabriel, Shijun, Philippe, sharing this stage and understanding that education is a process for all that is built at local level, that goes beyond knowledge, and that includes sectors such as health and allows us to develop citizenship and lives. We'd like to invite you to peace, to overcome differences, and to build new pathways for all of us, including others, such as our brothers and sisters from Venezuela, who we've welcomed into our education system. Education is based on solidarity, cooperation. It's sustainable. But above all, it's inclusive and equitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that very powerful account of leadership from the top across health and education, making a difference for the people of Tunja, and that intersectoral working, and also the very innovative use of narrative, people living by stories, to be able to increase their health literacy and their engagement and mental health and well-being. Thank you so much. And we will move on now to invite our third speaker to the platform, Mr. Gabriel Antonio Rios. He is the coordinator of the Learning City program in the city of Villa Maria in Argentina. He's also professor of philosophy and a doctor of sacred liturgy for the Pontifical Athenaeum of Sant'Anselmo in Rome. He's a professional musician. He works as the coach and first clarinet of the Villa Maria Symphony Orchestra. And he's been a coordinator of the Learning City program in the city of Villa Maria since 2016, when this city was included in the network and later received the UNESCO Learning City Award in 2017. We look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la presentación.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. So I'm representing the Learning City project, and I want to send greetings to all of those gathered here, representatives of learning cities, Lord Mayors, and distinguished guests. I'm looking forward to hearing and learning from all of my colleagues here. I'm hoping that we'll be able to share some of our experiences of strengthening learning for health in the context of learning cities. And I'm here to share with you what we've learned in Villa Maria. I entitled my presentation, Learning During the Pandemic. The pandemic obviously was a massive challenge, a tragedy, but necessarily we were able to turn it into an opportunity. We had no choice but to do so. And we had no choice but to work through education. And we saw that there was a close connection between these two aspects. First of all, there were the practical aspects of learning, like what do we need to do? What should we do at the school level? What should we do with our healthcare workers? And we had to connect very, very closely in this way for practical reasons. But also as time marched on through the pandemic, we realized that we were able to reflect on the implicit connections between health on the one hand and well-being, and education and learning on the other. And we've come up with a few conclusions, which I think are very powerful messages that we can get into in a little more depth as we go through. And I've put a couple up here on the screen. First one, prevention in health is essentially prevention as learning. We had to learn all over again how to wash our hands thoroughly and regularly. We had to look at our diet. We had to understand the importance of physical activity. So there is a connection between prevention and learning. Prevention for health is all about learning. And another key aspect, which brings us all together in this event, is resilience. And it's not perhaps so practical, but it's built on our experience, our understanding of what life is all about, the building of wisdom and patience. All of this resilience is also about learning. The educational programs in this respect was something that we had to look at through a new lens. We had to see the contribution that education could make to health. And that is why Villa Maria is a learning city, has been since 2017. And it meant that we looked at our educational programs and how that dovetails with health and well-being. And we were convinced that each of the different contributions that the municipality could make to learning as part of a learning city philosophy actually contributed to resilience and health. And for this reason, we were absolutely convinced that these educational programs were of key importance. We couldn't just kind of wait until the pandemic came to its logical end before getting back into examining educational programs. We saw 4 determinants related to people's learning tools for resilience and health. Firstly, lifestyle, environment, biology, and the health system. And all of these were part of people's toolkit. These are mentalities, habits, and they all form part of our learning process. And when we talk about the environment, we don't only talk about the planet, the climate emergency, but the environment is also something we need to consider in terms of our immediate milieu. Where do we live? Our community, our home, our natural surroundings. And so there we wanted to look at the environment in the more in the broader context. Thirdly, biology. There were a couple of key factors determined or informed by science. Firstly, on the one hand, was the vaccine itself. And vaccines normally are there to prolong human life, but this is also the fruit of research and knowledge. And without that research and knowledge, we would never have arrived at vaccines. And so again, all part of learning. And finally, the health system. Remember that this system is again linked in to learning and knowledge, and it's always being continuously improved thanks to continued learning and knowledge. I'll be brief, but I just wanted to show that we had so many different learning and teaching programs in the city, and there's a couple that I wanted to mention here. just to make sure that learning could continue despite the pandemic. We didn't want schools to close and learning to stop. We wanted a continuation of learning throughout the pandemic. The first one of what we had was the interdisciplinary mobile teams. These were established so as to ensure that a school, if it was closed, the child would not be left bereft without any form of learning. During the pandemic, this program meant that learning could continue. And the other program was Youth and Adult Education Completement. And this was basically about completing one's education. And the idea was to make up for lost ground and have a second chance at entering into and completing formal education. So these two programs, instead of being shut down, I think what they've done is they've shown us the importance of continuing learning, and they've drawn a connection between education and health again. With the interdisciplinary mobile teams that I mentioned a moment ago, instead of working on the issue of absenteeism, they rather focused on the new issue of connectedness. The children couldn't go to school; there were school closures, but they were supposed to have virtual classes, for example, on platforms like Zoom. And we thought, what are we going to be able to do to support these kids? And what they did was set up a learning network throughout the municipality. And if teachers couldn't offer a class, then these networks were there to lend support, and they basically were an add-on to the school's role. And in the context of the pandemic, we also called on this team to reach out to more schools. So instead of interrupting these programs with the onset of the pandemic, what we did was bolster them and give them even more wherewithal to make sure that they could make a real contribution. And the youth and adult education program that I mentioned before was using technology such as WhatsApp to reach out to people and ensure that people could be connected. People who had never used it before were suddenly able to use it for the first time. And in the context of the pandemic, this actually became a kind of excuse to reach out and learn something new. Okay, well, since I can't go to work, since I'm stuck at home, I can learn more about the virus, learn more about geography, learning about where people come, learning more about history, learning about the people that I'm connected with. And this meant that during the pandemic that this program actually blossomed. It became much broader. People who were disconnected from their loved ones or from their usual entourage through WhatsApp were able to connect to people they would not normally have been able to connect with. And so the program was bolstered rather than cut short in the pandemic. Now, the previous speaker also talked about this, that we are working in a network, the Latin American Cities Network. Now, we didn't have a chance to discuss this network, but it really meant that we were able to focus on the connections between health and learning in Latin America. And we had 3 meetings thereupon, which are here on the screen, about learning in the pandemic. The Secretariat of Health of Bogota hosted a meeting on the connections between health and education. We also set up a virtual conference on health and education in Villa Maria. And finally, the 4th one you can see on the screen is this meeting, which is a chance for us to reflect on what we've learned concerning health and education. And so that is why I think that the connection between these two really gives us a lot of food for thought, and particularly in this context, how to become stronger and more resilient. Thank you.
another presentation giving slightly different aspects of health literacy. And what really resonated with me in your presentation was around the prevention ideas of learning, proactive and practical, the resilience in learning, this existential knowledge gained through experience and attitudes. I think that's really interesting about health literacy, that it's not just a collection of facts, being able to give the right answers, but that it is a way of navigating health systems, a way of orientating yourself to health. And each of our presentations this morning is giving a very rich, rounded look at health literacy. And of course, talking about connectedness in that presentation. Key again, and intersectorality. I'd like to invite Mr. Philippe Bolle to the stand to give his presentation, our fourth speaker. He is the Learning City Coordinator for Clermont-Ferrand in the Auvergne in France. He is here on behalf of the Mayor, Mr. Bianchi, to present on the city's many initiatives as part of its strategy for lifelong learning. Clermont-Ferrand just received on Wednesday this week the Learning City Award 2021. In Clermont-Ferrand, by prioritising lifelong learning in public policies, has created a diverse learning ecosystem with stable funding. Indeed, as described on Wednesday, the city devotes more than 43% of its budget to education and youth, and 10% to the cultural sector for activities accessible to all. Clermont-Ferrand fostered democratic participation in urban development by funding projects which were submitted and chosen by the citizens. We look forward to your presentation.
Good, thanks for your presentation. My communication could be titled as From COVID-19, Which Lessons for a Learning City? And so until now, the relationship between health and citizenship was most often approached by our city from the point of view of access of care. A problem in our country where medical desertification now extends from rural territories to disadvantaged urban areas of our city. If strong responses are provided by our mayor with the creation of medical centers, the COVID-19 crisis has above all revealed to each one of us our personal health could not always remain confined to the space of intimacy, but that it is a common good on which the health of others depends, not only of those too close to us, but also of the unknown members of our own community. Our life, our death, our body, until then considered as only individual goods, have been literally sucked up by the common good, fighting this time for the collective preservation of each one. From this point of view, the most interesting time was this time when we knew little or nothing about the pandemic, where even scientific knowledge was held in check. An interesting time because the legitimate claim to access to care is necessarily weaker when that same care offers no guarantee of cure or even survival. This is the moment when our city, like others, encouraged NGOs to produce and craft masks for the oldest and most vulnerable people because we did not have any. This was the moment when our social workers mobilized along almost hundreds and hundreds of volunteers in our town to provide the necessary assistance to isolated elderly people, the sick ones, and so on. This the moment when we applied strong confinement measures in our nursing homes, even ahead of the other cities, right? And where we distributed tablets to the residents. This time, when the staff of our social service established daily communications with the worried families. We can be proud of our results. None of them died of COVID-19 in our nursing homes because we exchanged with other territories, with other learning cities to get the best information. Proud also because in the chaos, and I want to insist on this word, in the chaos caused by the pandemic, we have shown an incredible sense of innovation. It's also a moment when, contrary to the famous poster, "I want you," asking us to give our lives in war to preserve our civic community, we have changed our paradigm, educational paradigm, by thinking on a global scale that the lives of the weakest among us as a resource to be preserved, regardless of the nature of the political governance of countries. It was on a global scale. As Didier Jourdan rightly pointed out yesterday, our learning city has become aware that the public treatment of the health of citizens does not only involve access to care, nor does it only involve prevention campaigns, but also by promoting from the earliest age, through education, this idea that taking care of oneself is an act of citizenship, an act for others, for one's territory. And for this to happen, the message from the public authorities, from the community, must first be first, you are useful to us, you are precious for the community. I said this because we all know that people who are unemployed and receiving minimum social benefits are often also those who do not take care of their health, even in countries where, like France, where healthcare is free for them. When the message sent by the community to an individual is that is a useless burden to others, so this individual stops taking care of himself, the statistic shows this very clearly. That's why we have decided on an experimental basis in one of the most popular neighborhoods of our city to create educational paths for health and citizenship for all young people from 0 to 25 years old, and therefore, as you will have understood by yourself, for them, for these children, for their families too. So the second message is that we need to rethink the concept of vulnerabilities in the light of the pandemic. The real wake-up call of this pandemic is that whatever your social status, you are vulnerable. For many, this was a discovery, especially during the period of the confinement. This period was a very scarce moment when everyone was subject to the same rules. Although I agree that the material, concrete conditions of confinement was very different from one person to another. But this fact does not invalidate these collective performance. And so what will be very interesting is to learn how to manage collective vulnerability by learning from those who have been living it for a long time, who have become experts in vulnerability despite themselves. It would take too long to develop here, but the fact is that their vulnerability may be a harbinger, a precursor of our future collective vulnerability with regard to the brutal effects of climate change and the collapse of economic systems that it could bring about. Perhaps we also need to mix the different vulnerabilities, to play them side by side, so that each person can understand his or her own vulnerability in the light of the others. It's a very great educational challenge. In Clermont-Ferrand, before the pandemic, we created a nursing home which accommodates young students and elderly people in small terraced houses with gardens. Students are financially vulnerable, often in France. The elderly are vulnerable because of their age. And what is interesting is the intergenerational mutual aid that the program allows during this pandemic. No additional time for the third lesson. I know that the moderator in the sky could cut me. So, you know, it's serious to say that in France there is 67 million virologists. In Clermont-Ferrand, around 147,000 virologists. But the fact is that we need absolutely to launch, as we are doing, a large number of educational programs with university students, and we also strongly support the learning of scientific subjects, particularly among young girls. I want to insist about that. And to conclude, in a few seconds, I would like to quote just a few sentences from a book called L'Entraide, Mutual Aid, written by one of the main scientists who theorized evolution accurately. He wrote, there is more than 100 years ago, the animal species in which individual struggle has been reduced to its narrowest limits, and the practice of mutual aid has attained the greatest development, are invariably the most prosperous and the most open to further progress. The mutual protection which is obtained in this case, the possibility of attaining old age and accumulating experience, the higher intellectual development, and the further growth of sociable habits secure the maintenance of the species, its extension, and its further progressive evolution. I nearly forgot, the author is not Darwin for sure, but Prince Piotr Kropotkin, a great scientist and explorer, just died 100 years ago, and maybe mutual aid is the best educational program we have to launch in our learning cities for the future. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you so much. I like that idea of being the moderator in the sky. I think I'll use that as my title. What stopped me in my tracks in that presentation was your thought about the impact of society's message on people. And if your life is not seen as valuable, then you stop looking after your health, and really the power of cities to give that message to people that all lives are valuable. And I think that's come through very strongly in many of your presentations. And so we come to our fifth and final speaker in this session. Please come to the stand, Dr. Si-Hyung Lee, who is a psychiatrist and brain scientist from Korea, studied medicine and psychiatry at Kyungpook National University, Graduate School of Medicine, and at Yale University. He's been president of the Korean Neuropsychiatric Association and the director of Gangbuk Samsung Hospital in the 1990s. He's now the director of Serotonin Cultural Center, the head of Helian Sun Village, and director of the Comprehensive Research Institute for Natural Medicine Korea. Through his research and lectures, he spreads the method of enhancing natural healing power using brain science and psychiatry. He's written more than 100 books, including Living with Guts, Do Serotonin, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. And please be patient with my poor English. So it's been a long day for you, so I try to make my speech as short as possible. Since I'm a psychiatrist, my talk will be focused on mental health education in Korean society. Now, still, we are not free from Corona-19 pandemic. It has been nearly 2 years and is the first global crisis in our life. We have been drained emotionally as well as physically. Fatigue, anxiety, and corona blue, and depression, and recently rising suicidal rate. So we are going through hard times as our economy is going down. Me, as a social psychiatrist and running Prevention Center for Lifestyle Disorder, I've got small consolation out of this crisis. That is, Korean people, they began to understand how important the prevention is. We Koreans are, in certain aspect, quite optimistic, whatever the problem is not at all likely. That leads to so many safety accidents, such as car, fire, and when you look at our construction sites, you'll be surprised. And even national defense, also we are neglecting. So health prevention is not exception. And instead, we are relying on hospital. So even minor medical problems comes up, they rush into the hospital. Thus, our outpatient visitor number is 3 times more frequent comparing to other nations. Now, once you are on hospital bed, you become so passive and powerless that you will become good patients on doctor's side. So as you know, many of lifestyle disorder come from our bad habit of everyday life. So therefore, those who can treat problem is not hospital doctors, but patients, him or herself. Korea is going into extreme aging society with extra high speed. Now, our average lifespan is over 82, yet healthy age is average 10 years shorter. Thus, many of senile hospital beds are occupied by those seniors. The last 10 years of your life stage facing death are really painful and miserable, not only for the patients, but also family members, and become quite a burden on public service. So in order to prevent this kind of disaster, health education for preventive measure is essential than any other field. Yet, as I said before, we don't pay much attention to prevention. So for effective mental health education, I will list some important key issues to meet the era of the extra longevity and AI and high technology society. I'll give you 10 areas that I emphasize for my patients and people in general. Number one, make aging blessing event, not fear. Actually, people become very fearful that they are getting old. Number two, make active senior to work till at least 75 years or longer. I always emphasize lifelong work. So longevity means long work society. I pay still subway ticket because as I am active, productive social member, so that I want to prove to myself. And number three, respect the elderly. Number four, mixed generation young and old work together, gives you better productivity. Number 5, break stereotyped life stage. That is, when you're young, education. When you become middle age, you work. And then when you get old, retire. So this is very simple stage of your life. Now we have to change it into multi-stage of life. Number 6, work where robot and AI cannot do. And I will mention 4 areas. Now, what are those work that robot and AI cannot work? Number 1, the sympathetic exchange, such as counseling. Number 2, creative work, because it requires really complicated brain work. And number 3, understandability. And number 4, negotiation. And those areas, robot cannot invade. And number 7, reinforce resilience. Experiencing the corona pandemic, we have found we have very weakened the resilience power. Number 8, keep in mind and practice for healthy aging. Number 9, remember children born in 27, half of them live till 103 years old. So world is watching Korea, how to manage such extra longevity society. Number 11, so-called IT Big Four, like GAFA, BAT, and other important industry, they all invest, and research fund go to healthcare. And I want to ask, who will be the next multi-billionaire? Is those who invest healthcare. So now, lastly, but not least, enforce immune power. That is so important for corona pandemic and in the future Korean society. Thank you very much.
Thank you for yet another aspect of health literacy and of the healthy lives of city populations there, talking strongly about intergenerational working, keeping our links to our mental health and reinforcing our resilience. Well, I hope you, like me, have enjoyed those 5 different presentations, bringing different perspectives together on health literacy. And I have a question for the speakers in the room, with which hopefully we will close our session. And it's a challenge because it's 1 minute or so to respond to. If you were asked by another city for some advice, a city that was trying to take the first steps to increase the health literacy across its population, what advice would you give from your experiences to that city? And I wonder whether we could start with Mr. Moreno Villamil, please.
Bueno, un trabajo en equipo.
Well, teamwork involving all sectors. Leadership. We need leaders who mobilize and motivate others. And in the midst of differences, They should be able to find common ground, protection, well-being, taking care of oneself and others as an act of responsibility, not just individual, but also collective and communal. I believe that localities that can read the historical situation can really achieve great things through intersectorality, education, health, collective learning, inclusion, sustainability, and resilience.
Many thanks. And Mr. Rios, please.
Well, that's quite a difficult question to answer, but thank you very much because it makes us really think. In our limited experience as a learning city, I would encourage other cities to do two things. The first is to create networks, for example, the Global Network of Learning Cities, which make us reflect, share experiences, and take inspiration from others. And also, it's important to have an internal dialogue among specialists in various different disciplines who work in different areas. For example, the Secretary of Health with the Secretary of Education. And the Secretary of Education could contribute in terms of health and vice versa. In our experience, these types of dialogue have been very fruitful, and they've really enabled us to develop very creative programs.
Thanks so much. We can already see the creative approaches coming out of all of these cities. Mr. Bouillet, what would you like to add?
Maybe that, first of all, is to find the sense of what we are doing. Oftenly, we launch many programs, educational programs, but if sometimes it's just, I try to find the term in English, but a catalogue, it's a catalogue. It's like a catalogue. And people don't see the true sense of what you are doing as a mayor, as a council. So, first, philosophy. The first is philosophy before pragmatism. And if you want to really find the way to gather people, first you have to explain what you want to do, where you want to go, and which kind of society, which kind of city you want. Ensure the most democratic one is the best for everybody. For each citizen, there is no ignorance. Everybody knows something, and this something could be very useful for the city and for everybody. That's maybe the sense of what we are trying to do in Clermont-Ferrand, even it's very hard, because the institutions are often our worst enemies. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Being clear about the message and the goal. And Dr. Jung Lee, would you like to add something?
We are from all different countries and different culture. And yet there's one thing common, is education is important. But the problem is to deliver the education, sometimes it's no effect at all to make people understand how the health education is important. So this has been my problem. I'm running small prevention center, so that's my problem. But through this conference, I have learned many different ways of approaching to the public in terms of the education. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of our session. Many thanks to our speakers for an exciting start to these parallel sessions, and many thanks to the conference organisers and colleagues at UNESCO for their support of the session, and to all our participants for your interest in strengthening learning for health. I think we've had strong messages about leadership across sectors, around valuing every person for what they know and what they can contribute across the life course, for connecting formal education with other types of informal and non-formal education, and to have a clear message that brings everybody together under strong leadership. Thank you so much to all our speakers today, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thanks to our moderator, Ms. Nicola Gray, and all of our speakers for a wonderful session. In this session, we talked about the theme of strengthening learning for health in the context of learning cities. So in 15 minutes, Parallel Thematic Forum 2 will begin at 4:30 Korean time. So we would like the participation of the attendees. Thank you for joining us.